Okay, we're joined by Stefan Padfield again. He is with the Free Enterprise Project. Sorry about that, Stefan, deputy director there. Now we're talking about this insane SEC initiative to push this DEI stuff, and that's bad enough. But because it seems to me that almost every day, another three-letter agency is getting involved in pushing these agendas and these narratives down. Most people are very unwilling to accept this crap, but that's not going to stop them. But then we've got other private industry. I mentioned BlackRock, worth billions and billions of dollars. A lot of people have BlackRock in their 401ks. And you've got Larry Fink, and you got perfectly named, by the way. And they are pushing this stuff too. What gives on this? Is this just a way, you think, by people like Larry Fink to ensure that he remains liked by the progressive cocktail party crowd? What is this all about? I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm very fond of saying that if you try to understand how we got here, it's always more than one type of incentive, right? More than one group. So you've got essentially the true believers, right? So if we were just talking about sort of some of these gender issues, they truly believe that trans women are women, and that drives their decision making. But then you've also got the opportunists, and I think there's a very good argument that folks like Larry Fink at BlackRock, you just follow the money, right? I mean, they were getting basically crushed on these index funds. And so all of a sudden they realize, oh, if we can get this ESG thing cooking, then we can charge some really much greater fees on our funds that have the label ESG on it. And that's a win for us. I think you've got Vivek Ramaswamy's book where he talks about how during the Occupy Wall Street movement, there was essentially a deal struck where Wall Street said, look, if you stop coming after us with your pitchforks, then we'll support your causes, right? You being the radical left in this case. And so this deal is made. And so we have some of these opportunists. We also have useful idiots, right? The people who look at phrases like diversity, equity, inclusion, environment, right? And they think, well, what could be wrong with that, right? What could be wrong with Black Lives Matter? What could be wrong with anti-racism? And they just don't look under the hood. And with those folks, we just need to educate them on what's actually happening, how this stuff is basically just a Trojan horse for radical leftism. And then you've got the cowards, right? And it's understandable because if you stick your head up in these environments and you say, wait a minute, right? Isn't basically this just racism, flipped on its head? You'll be canceled, right? And literally canceled, lose your job and so forth. So all of those types are basically complicit or involved in getting us to the point where we're at. And, you mentioned the government, and it really is very clearly, and they say this expressly, a whole of government movement. And what's really frightening is this public-private partnership, just like we're talking about with the SEC and NASDAQ, this is ultimately fascism, right? I mean, people throw that word around all the time, but what it literally means is a totalitarian government, right? And total being in every aspect of your life. There's no private space anymore where you get to think or do what you want. And it basically says, oh, sure, we'll let the corporations and the private property stuff go on as long as you do what we say what we say you need to do, right? We'll let you keep the corporation, but you need to push this agenda. And so essentially, that's the direction we seem to be moving. And I remember talking to a leftist a while ago, and I suggested what was going on was tyrannical. And they said, oh, leftists don't have a tyrannical bone in their body. Well, it seems like the entire agenda is tyrannical. It's by definition totalitarian, tyrannical, and fascist. So I think the explanation for how do these corporations end up doing what they're doing, it's multifaceted. It's the true believers, the opportunists, the useful idiots, and the cowards. And we need to really push back and help to some extent, all of them.
Yeah, and by the way, those various groups are not necessarily mutually exclusive. I mean, I would say most true believers are also useful idiots, but hey, that's just me. It seems to me, and Stefan, you kind of give me your take on this. It does seem like we are kind of on the knife's edge here. And I think that people are starting to get fed up with this stuff. Probably because we have many more sources get our information, including TNTradio.live, like we're on now. And there's other, there's alternative media. And I think a lot of people are starting to wake up to this and say, you know what? I don't much give a damn about DEI because that's not going to help me put food on the table, and I sure don't care about this pushing the energy and the green movement and all that. Do you think that we're at a tipping point with any of this? I mean, or is this just going to be, I'm going to do what you say because that's how I'm going to make money? Because I mean, I'll give you an example, just anecdotally. Dave Chappelle, the comedian, they tried to cancel him, and he just stood up and said, "Screw you, I will not be canceled." And I think that's what we need people to do. Just stand up and say, pound sand. I could, boy, if I could say a lot worse, but screw you. I will not abide. Is that what we need more and more of, you think?
I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic. I mean, we just basically went through a period where we saw Bud Light, Target, right? Disney is getting hammered. This idea that I think was in place for quite a while, that these corporations in particular could just ignore their right of center customer base because somehow we were pro-business and we weren't really that into boycotting, right? And so they could just pander to the left and their leftist employees and the woke mob. Those days are over, right? This is really hitting the bottom line in a way that we haven't seen before. In fact, we used to tell people at the Free Enterprise Project, we do most of our activism through shareholder proposals as a shareholder. And we would generally tell people, look, you can boycott, but that's really not that effective. Well, that's no longer what we're saying. We're saying it's great. Boycott, it is effective, but also do what you can as a shareholder in supporting organizations like us and others that are advancing your values. So I do think there's reasons to be optimistic. I think you're absolutely right that people are just getting fed up. And again, I often say, right of center or conservative, but it's not even right of center and conservative. It's mainstream people. It's independent thinkers who just are sick of having this stuff crammed down their throat. And they see that it's not a value proposition, right? They see that everything's terrible. The movies are terrible. The products are terrible. The corporations are losing money. I have this thing that I do every time I see a headline about how somebody just won some ESG award, some corporation. I immediately go and check their last 12 months returned. And I would say 80% of the time they're in the tank, right? And so they're touting all this ESG sustainability stuff.
Yeah. Well, you see, if somebody touts that, I don't do business with them. And I'll give you another anecdotal here, Stefan. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've noticed AARP. Now, I know they're not necessarily pushing ESG, but they've been all about DEI, and they were fully in the tank for Obamacare. This is a little bit off the subject, but it still kind of, I think, is relevant. Their ads are lately, you see some guy pretending to be a regular American. He goes, "Look, I may not always agree with the AARP, but I know they've got my back when it comes." And whenever I start seeing a company advertising that starts out with, "You may not always agree with us here at Anheuser-Busch or Walt Disney or pick your company of choice," there's a good chance that wokeness is leading to brokenness in those companies, and they're starting to pay a financial price for it. Well, I'd love to have you back on. This is the first time you've been on with me, and I really appreciate you, Stefan. And I hope you can come back and see us again real soon, and share more of this stuff. Where can we find you online? Obviously, Free Enterprise Project, but where can we find you on the socials, Stefan?
Yeah, no, I would really enjoyed the conversation and would love to come back. So our main site is nationalcenter.org. And then I'm also on X, just Stefan Padfield. That's the at Stefan Padfield. So you can follow me there as well.
Okay. Stefan Padfield, thank you for your time today. We hope to talk to you again real soon. Have a wonderful time. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay. Take care of yourself. Well, there he goes. Yeah, that's what we got to do, folks. We got to just say, hey, enough of this stuff. We're not taking it anymore. You're listening and watching State of the Nation on TNT Radio. We'll be right back after this.